the biggest police scandals in Bay Area history. Kamala Harris, she revoked my license for life. I didn't do anything wrong. She starts crying and goes, "That's what the FBI told me to say."
Oh, so what happened with the case?
So I'm back out on patrol now. I'm busy. I'm going. I'm working patrol graveyard, weekend graves, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 in the morning. And I go into work one night. It's a Friday night. Walk in the back door of work, and I come in and I notice that something was odd. Like the chief was still walking around. This is on a Friday at like 6 o'clock. He's gone at 3 o'clock, right? And I noticed he was there walking around at 6 o'clock, which is like, that guy's never here past 3 o'clock on a Friday, So this is kind of weird, like what's going on? So we go into lineup, and as soon as we clear lineup, I load up my car, fire up the MDC, the terminal, the computer, and right off the gate, I got a call all the way across town for a like obstruction in the roadway. So I'm like, okay. So I drive out there, 15 minutes to get out there. I get out there. Of course, it was a bogus call. They were just trying to get me away from the station so they could set up. So there's nothing out there, of course, right? So I clear the call, 10-8, and I immediately get a phone call on my cell phone. And it's lieutenant's asking me, "Hey, can you come back to the station? Need to talk to you real quick." Sure. Okay. So I drive back to the station. I walk in the back door, and I'm greeted by I think it was a total, ended up of 14 guys, agents from the Department of Justice, Internal Affairs, people from the DA's office, DA investigators. And I'm jumped out, "Freeze, motherfucker, get on the ground." Like, whoa, what is going on? I'm totally shocked. Like, what is happening? So they pat me down. They take all my gear away. They pat me down multiple times. "Are you sure you don't have a backup gun on you?" "No, you got your knife." They already had my knife, my duty belt and everything. First, they throw me in an interview room, never Mirandized me, never gave me the Lybarger reading, which is a thing in California that they have to, it's like a Miranda, but for cops. And they never did either of those things, and immediately go into questioning me, telling me, "Oh, we just want to ask you about some things about how you know this private investigator." And I'm like, okay. I tell my friends and family this all the time. If you get stopped by law enforcement, I want an attorney. Don't ever talk to them without an attorney, because their only goal is to try to hem you up. They're not your friend. They're not trying to help you. Right. And I always tell people that, just ask for an attorney. Don't say anything. What do I do? The complete opposite, right? So I sit there and I give a 2.5-hour statement. And I basically tell them how I know this guy. And, we used to be the private investigator. He and I were cops together in Antioch years ago. And anyway, long story short, I basically tell them what they want to know, and they're asking me, a bunch of questions. And the one thing I did wrong through this whole thing, because you're going to hear a bunch of charges they charged me with, they're totally bogus. The one thing I did wrong was I had an AR-15 that wasn't California legal. It didn't, in California, you're supposed to have this thing called a bullet button, which you can't release the magazine. It's like a fixed magazine. You have to have a special tool to release the mag, to drop it out, and it can't be over 10 rounds. You can if you're a police officer, but you have to have a letter from your chief or your sheriff, an authorization letter allowing you to bypass the law or whatever. I didn't have the letter, nor did half the department. Literally hundreds of guys, 700 plus deputies in the department. I knew hundreds of deputies that had AR-15s that were not compliant.
Right.
And anyway. So it was no big deal. On the SWAT team, I would take that gun to SWAT practice and shoot it. And it was a shorty too. It was a short barreled AR, and so, which is illegal in California. So anyway, I'd have it at the range, and the SWAT sergeants and stuff would say, "Hey man, you better not ever shoot anyone with that gun." I go, no, this is just a keepsake. After the 2.5-hour interview, they arrest me. They go to my house. They search my house. They find an AR-15. They charge me with possession of an AR-15, transporting an AR-15, or I'm sorry, transferring an assault weapon, possession of illegal assault weapon. All these charges. They charged me with. They asked me. So I guess I got to back up a little, because it's a very confusing story. So when all this happened, they thought that I was involved in this larger ring of cops that were doing some bad stuff. They were stealing drugs from the evidence room. They were stealing drugs they would go out on search warrants and steal drugs, money, cash, guns from, during the search warrant, and not log them and just pocket it. And so it's, probably a pretty common thing, I would imagine,
right.
Or super common, but it happens, right? But my case had nothing to do with that. There was this private investigator, and he was friends with these cops that were doing this, right? So the private investigator is the common denominator. He's in the middle. I'm over here. He's got asked me to help him with a DUI case. And then they got the dirty cop ring over here, stealing dope and doing all that, and he's reselling it on the street for them. That none of that had anything to do with me. The only thing that had to do with me was that this same private investigator had tipped me off about several DUIs, and I worked and mind you, after all the years in police work, right? I'm older. I think I was like 47 at the time. I've been running and gunning in the streets for years, and so now I'm in this cushy little upscale town of Danville. There's like literally no crime. There's nothing going on there except DUIs, right?
And so the private investigator, when you say he was just tipping you off, so he's in a location where he sees some guy who's drunk, gets in a car, and he says,
no. So that's where the story gets weird. So what, and I find all this out later, but at the time he tells me that he's doing a surveillance for a family court. And that he says that there's this case going on with a guy who's the wife claims he's a heavy drinker, and it's a child custody battle. And the judge and the courts want to know, hey, does this guy really drink and drive as much as she says? Said it's kind of weird because I've never heard of a judge ordering that, and he didn't say that they ordered it, but he said he was doing a surveillance for a child custody case. And he says, so this guy's a heavy drinker. He drives through your town drunk, and mind you, like I said, there's no crime in this town, so they press us for DUI stats constantly. Got to get the DUIs, right? Every weekend they want a DUI every night. On the weekend grave, Friday, Saturday, they know Sunday's going to be slow, but Friday, Saturday, they're like, every officer's got to get a DUI. You have to get one. And they flat out said that the chief, who's really the lieutenant, like I said, would say, if you can't keep up with the requirements, you can go back to North Richmond or Bay Point, which are bad areas, and you can work out there if you don't want to stay, if you don't want to perform, right? And so in California, having a quota is illegal. It's actually illegal to have a quota.
It seems like it should be.
Right. So, but they do it anyway.
I'm sitting there thinking, what if there are no DUIs?
Yeah.
What if it's just a bunch of really upper class, nice people that don't get drunk?
Well, we can get into that later. There's a lot of shady stuff with the DUI, but basically, so they because it's illegal, they call it a performance objective, which I always thought was funny. You call it whatever you want, but if you're telling me that I don't make my 2 DUIs a weekend and you're going to kick me out of this little cushy spot I'm pretty sure that's a quota, right? So this performance objective we have to have. So they're constantly pressuring us. So this guy calls me and he's like, hey, I'm doing a surveillance in your town where you're working. And, I've got my son at the time was a teenager, and he's going to high school in this town. And, I don't want drunks drive. My wife's pregnant with our soon-to-be daughter coming. And it's like, I don't want, somebody who's driving through our town wasted out of his mind, right? And so he says, would you be interested in, taking a look at him? I said, I'll take a look at him. I said, I won't stop anybody without probable cause, but I'll take a look at him. So anyway, he texts me one night, I'm working, and he says, I forget how he mentioned it, but he said, basically, are you working tonight? And I said, yeah. I told him what time I started, and he said, I'll call you later, whatever. So I'm working, and I get a text message saying, that he's outside the Vine Bar, it was called, in Danville, and that he's doing a surveillance. So I forget what time it was. I think I got down there at 9. Well, the stop I think occurred at like 9:50, and I think I got down there about 9:30. So I sat there a total of 20 minutes, and that'll be important later because I sat there for a total of 20 minutes, right? So he basically, I'm sitting there, and finally, because I had met with him, we pulled our cars up next to each other, and he told me what's going. He goes, "Hey, I've got operatives inside the Vine Bar. They're watching this guy. He's had like 9 glasses of wine. He's fucked up. They've been in there for hours, and when he goes to leave, you want to stop him?" I said, "Yeah." So I said, I'll take a look at him. So I park down the street, like a half a block away. I back into a driveway, and I sit there. And at some point, I text him, and this will come into play later too. My text messages. I texted him. I said, "Hey man, I can't sit here it's a Friday night. I can't sit here all night." And mind you, I was 10-8, meaning available for service. Mm-hmm. Dispatch could have sent me to a call at any minute. It wasn't like I was telling dispatch, "Hey, I'm busy."
Right.
And
you're available.
Right. I'm available for calls, and I know it's a Friday night. You're 9:30. They're gonna something's gonna pop off, right? So I'm sitting there, and anyway, so he responds. So I said, that's what my first text was. I can't sit here all night. He responds back, says he's up and heading for the door. That was his response. My second text was, what kind of car does he drive? He responded, a white truck in the north lot. And I just sent K, just the letter K for okay, right? And so sure enough, this dude comes out of the bar a few minutes later, stumbles to his car, drops his keys, stumbling all over. He gets in his truck, he backs out. He turns out, he goes on the main street. I pull in behind him. We're not a block down the road. He almost takes out a parked car. I mean, literally his side view, passenger side view mirror almost takes out the side of that car. He swerves back in the lane, blows through a red light, and then he's going like 50 and a 25. So I light him up. Whole thing's on dashboard cam. I light him up. Guy's wasted. Can't even touch his. I mean, he can't touch his nose. He's all over the place, right? So hook him up for DUI. The following week, he calls me. Hey, are you working? Yeah. And he goes, oh, I got another one. Watching this guy at the Vine Bar. And now I started to think, well, that's kind of like, how do you just happen to know where these guys are going to be?
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking that's kind of weird. Like, how do these guys just go to the same bar? Right. What? And so I thought it's kind of weird, but whatever. In my mind, I kind of justified it because I'm like, well, I mean, he's tipping me off about a drunk driver. What am I doing? And I always say, think about it this way. Imagine if he tips me off about a drunk driver and I do nothing. I say, it's kind of weird that I know you, so I'm not interested in your DUI report. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy goes down the road and kills a pedestrian. Then the headlines would have been,
stopped him.
like, the dereliction of duty, someone dead because this officer wouldn't do his job.
Well, the other thing is, I was thinking to myself that it is odd that he knows the people, but the fact that he's sitting outside of a bar and people are walking out of a bar drunk, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if he didn't know the guy at all,
Yeah.
he just happened to say, hey, I'm sitting here and I just saw a guy come out of the fucking bar, get into his car. He looks very drunk.
Right.
Like, obviously, that's a good place to be sitting.
Yeah.
If I was you, I would be sitting across the street
Yeah.
with the binocular. That guy's drunk.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so it happens again. The second week, I arrest a second guy. So anyway, what was that? That was like January of 2010. So I hear in I think February, end of February, I hear, oh shit, so and so, this guy Chris Butler, the private investigator, him and Norm Welsh, the commander for the state narcotics unit, they've been arrested with 29 felonies each for like they're stealing drugs from the evidence room, selling it, all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, what? Like, that's crazy. And then right away I thought like, oh, and I think the news article actually said too, like investigators are going through all their phone records and computers and stuff. And I thought like, oh great, they're going to see the phone call about the DUI stuff. And it looked kind of weird, but I still was like, I didn't do anything wrong, but it looks weird. So I assumed internal affairs.
Your name's going to come up.
Yeah, I assumed internal affairs would be probably coming to talk to me at some point. So that's another. So I mean, this thing just it spiders out in so many directions. So when I heard that, I thought, I want, if they think I'm involved in drugs or something, I want the internal affairs to come to my house. I want to be like, open the door, go ahead, take a look. I got nothing. I'm not involved in any of this. You look through whatever you want, right? And so. But the one thing I did, I had the AR-15 that I knew was not legal in California. So I gave it to another cop to hold on to and said he was a reserve. And I said, hey, the guy was a friend of mine. And I said, hey, can you hang on to this for me? And he had one. He had an illegal AR too that right. He had. So he goes, he tells me, I'll put it in the attic with mine. I'll stash them both in the attic. And I go, okay. So later, about a week later, the guy goes to internal affairs. This is before I ever even on the radar. He goes to internal affairs and says, hey, I think Steve was involved in that whole cop ring of the guys stealing drugs and doing all that. And he gave me something to hold on to, but I have no idea what it is. So where is it? It's in my house. And he says he told me to hide it in the attic. I never told him to. He told me he was going to put it in the attic. So he leads the investigators to it. They find the gun. Now they're thinking, oh, for sure, this guy's totally dirty. He must be involved in the whole thing. So that's when they swoop in and arrest me at work. God, where do I go from here?
So you want to go back to when you were questioned?
Oh yeah. So that night they questioned me about, have you ever, these guys were taking drugs. You know anything about that? No. And they're really focused on the DUI stuff. And I'm telling them openly about the DUI stuff because I didn't think I did anything wrong. I'm like, yeah, you tipped me off about some drunk drivers. But what it turned out was that he was being paid by the wives of these two guys that were arrested for DUI. The wives through their attorney, which was that was a common denominator on that side. They had the same, child custody attorney, and she was paying the private investigator, I don't even remember how much it was. It was like some amount of money. Hey, we want to make sure these guys get arrested so the wives get custody of the kids. So that's where the setup was.
Yeah.
Is they were creating a situation. And that was the other thing. So Butler had, these young girls working, he called them decoys, that worked for him on some of his PI cases. So he paid his decoys to go in there and flirt with the guy, like, oh, come on, let's have another round, let's have another drink. You're right. And in fact, one of them, one of the people that was running the operation in there was a guy named Carl Marino, who basically later became, testified for the state, maybe ratted everybody out or whatever, but on the drug side, but he was actually selling drugs himself. The guy was right in there dealing drugs, but of course, he went to the state narcotics and said, I'm willing to testify, and they used him, of course, so now he's a witness, no longer a co-defendant, right?
Right.
So
better to be a witness.
Yeah. But so that guy was in the one case was telling the guy that I arrested in the white truck, the one that I said walked out to the white truck.
Yeah.
He was telling that guy he was an A&E television producer, and they wanted to do a story on his winery because this guy owned a local winery. And so this guy's falling hook, line, and sinker for this, this BS story, and they set the whole thing up. Of course, the government later tries to say that I was the mastermind and made all that. I didn't even heard any of this stuff until it was in my discovery. But so this guy, claims to be Carl Marino claims to be a A&E movie producer, sucks the guy in. Come on, let's have another round, another flight of wine. So that's why the guy had 9 glasses of wine, because they kept ordering more flights, which Butler was paying for, right? And the thing's so convoluted. And ironically, this guy just about maybe 2 years ago, this winery owner was killed by a DUI driver. After all this stuff. And of course, the night I arrested him, he was charged with DUI. That case was obviously never even filed because right shortly afterwards I was arrested. So they never even filed charges on him. He sued. That's a whole nother story. He sued after I got we'll get to that. Okay. After my criminal situation was over, it went civil. And we can get into that after. I'll tell you the criminal side, though. Okay. We should probably talk about that. So
you'd been interviewed. You answered all their questions.
They end up charging me with 7 felonies that night. Right, they take me to jail. My own 2 guys I'm handcuffed in the back of the detective's car. It's a Charger, unmarked Charger, and they're so tight the back of a Charger is, and I'm in handcuffs, and it's just I'm a big guy. It's killing me. Like my wrists are just like in those hinged cuffs. It's just digging in my wrist. My hands are going numb. I'm like, dude, please, can you guys loosen this? You think they give you some kind of leeway being a cop, right? The guy says to me, one of the guys says to me, "Oh, they're not built for comfort, sir," and they all start laughing, which is exactly what they tell the suspects all the time. Or they say, "Oh, just what's the other one they always say? It's they'll say." Oh, just give them time; they'll loosen up, or something. Something stupid like that. Like this hard metal's not going to loosen up, right? But anyway, I just thought that was just something else. Like, really, dude, I work with you guys. They were both on the SWAT team, sergeants on the SWAT team, and they were also detectives, but I'm like, really, I work with you all the time, and you're going to do me like that, whatever. But I think part of it too was because I was SWAT and a DTAC instructor, and into martial arts or whatever. I think that's why they came at me so heavy that night. They had this huge presence. There were like 14 people there. I'm like, you had one guy call me in to answer questions. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to attack anybody, But anyway, especially because I didn't think I did anything wrong. Why would I? I just want to explain myself. So I ended up giving them a 2.5-hour interview, which they later, we at trial we wanted a motion to suppress because they never Mirandized me, and the federal judge said that I should have known better. I've never heard of that. I've never seen that in Miranda, where you have the right to attorney and all that, blah blah blah, unless you know better.
I was gonna say that Tom, when we interviewed Tom was like he wouldn't Mirandize anybody because he's like, well, they're free to leave. You could leave anytime. But I was thinking to myself, if I'm being questioned by an officer, I don't feel like I'm free to leave.
Yeah, no. Like, I was in the. my chair was backed into a corner, and I had 4 cops around me in a semicircle, right, just grilling me with questions, and I'm backed into a corner. There's no way. And they had, remember, they had taken everything off me, including my wallet, my car keys, everything, my can of chew. I mean, they took everything off of me. So there's no way anybody would feel that they are free to leave at that point. I mean, I totally felt like, I'm not free to leave.
So you went. They bring you down to the police station. They process you.
They processed me. My bail's $260,000 in the state case. That was a state, but that was I had to. So I mean, this thing just it's so crazy. So I basically. They're ordering me within so I post bail, right? I get a bondsman. I post bail at the 10%, right? And then I'm out in I think it was a little over a day, 36 hours or something. I was out. After I bail out, they asked me to come in and give a statement, right? And my attorney's like, don't give a statement, dude. These people are charging you with crimes. Like, why would you do that? So they say, if you don't give a statement, we're going to terminate you. So then I'm thinking, well, then I'll have a show that I'm fired on my record, right? So he goes, yeah, it's probably better if you just resign. So I resigned, right? So I resigned. So that way I never had to go back and give them any more statements or whatever. And so the year goes by, and in December of 2010, this all happened on March 4th is the night I was arrested. My daughter was born March 10th, just 6 days later. It was just so crazy. But in December of 2010, my attorney tells me, hey, the state dropped all 7 charges against you, but the feds took over the case and they just indicted you on 4 counts at 20 years. Each one's a 20-year, max, like the feds are, almost everything's 20 years, right? Yeah. So I'm just like, what? I'm freaking out, right? So I go, they say the U.S. attorney and the FBI want to interview you. They want to talk to you if you're willing to talk to them. He goes, I don't normally advise clients to talk to them, but if, that's up to you if you want to. And I'm still, in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't think I did anything wrong. So I'll go in and talk to them. So I go in and talk to them and at the federal building in San Francisco. And it was just such a hostile that these people were. It was so weird. They're acting like they're mad at me. How can you be angry? You don't even know me. I thought you want to ask me questions, but they're just so nasty people, right? And so it was a female assistant U.S. attorney, and there were 2 of them. There was a guy there too, and then there were 2 FBI agents, and then myself and my attorney at that time. And so they started asking me about if I'm the allegations were saying that. Well, I guess we should back up. The guy says the private investigator, right, when he was looking at the 29 felonies with the other guy that was stealing drugs and all that. Yeah. They basically said, if you testify against those other cops, we'll give you time off your sentence. So he was in the process of working off his case in that. And then they said, if you testify as me, Tanabe, we'll give you more time off your sentence. So that's when things got dicey. That's what brought this all about. So he starts telling them that I basically, the story morphed from the very first version he gave was the truth. The very first version he gave to the state investigators was that he just knew a cop that was working in Danville. That's where he wanted to do his little sting operation. So he called a guy he knew he worked there, which was me. And he didn't pay me. He just tipped me off. The first version was the truth. Well, they basically told him, that's not going to get you any time off your sentence. There's nothing illegal about that. That's not going to get you time off your sentence. Now, if you paid him, and I still have I have the discovery. I have 18,000 pages in my garage. And he says, now if you paid him or bribed him, that's a whole nother story. And I shit you not, you can see it in the paperwork. He literally goes from saying how he didn't bribe me. Yeah, he just tipped me off. As soon as they tell him that, he goes, oh, yeah, now I remember that. No, I gave him money. So anyway, during the investigation, the FBI went through all my finances going back 5 years. They had, of the 18,000 pages, 6,000 pages were nothing but financial transactions. Every credit card swipe, every ATM withdrawal, every check I'd ever written, going back 5 years. It was 6,000 pages. They couldn't find a dime unaccounted for. And I had one job, and I had direct deposit through the county, right? So my paycheck goes in, and then I use my card and write checks and whatever. They couldn't find any influx of money that came in. And so
they couldn't find the $3,000 bribe that you deposited in cash on this day.
Exactly. And they couldn't find money that, how did he buy this? Because after his check, he didn't have enough money left over to buy an expensive watch or whatever, whatever it would be. So they go back to him and they say, no, we can't find any money that you would have given him. We can't find any evidence of that, right? And he's still trying to get time off his case. He's desperate to do anything. So then he changes his story to, oh, that's right. Now I remember it wasn't just money; it was blow. So he says, I gave him some blow. He wanted some blow, and
Right.
and the investigators who knew me were even like, Tanabe doesn't do blow.
Right.
Like you sure you get he wanted blow from you. Oh yeah, he's a big fiend for that stuff, right? And so they were like looking at each other like, yeah, I don't know about this. They were skeptical. You can see it in the interview. Anyway. That's what he went with. At the end of the day, those charges were later dropped in federal court, and we'll get to that. But getting back to the story, so the feds indict me on 4 counts in December of 2010. Right. That was on a Monday. On Thursday, they're already telling me just plead guilty to 1 felony, and we'll give you 18 months in federal prison. And I said, we'll plead guilty to 1 felony, 18 months. And I said, I'm not pleading guilty. I didn't do anything wrong, much less a felony. At this point, I know I'm not going to be a cop anymore, right? So, because almost a year's gone by. But I'm like, I'll take some misdemeanors or something, so at least I have a life afterwards, right? And I'll even do whatever jail time you need, but just give me misdemeanors if you're going to do that, because I wanted this nightmare over. This thing's dragging on almost a year now. So they said, no, felony or nothing. I said, well then, no, I'm not going to plead guilty to a felony. And the U.S. attorney, this woman says, if you don't take our deal, we're going to supersede and double your charges. So now I'm thinking, okay, these people are nuts. They're really grasping at straws here. Like, if you could charge me with 8, why wouldn't you have done it in the first place? Why would you charge me with 4 and then threaten me with 4 more? You would have just charged me with 8 to begin with. So anyway, so I don't take the deal. A couple months later, my attorney calls me, hey, man, we got to go back to court. You're being rearranged. They superseded your indictment with 4 more counts. So now I'm looking at 8 counts. Each one's a 20-year case, right? And what they did was, remember the text messages I talked about where I said that? So the 3 of those new charges were every time even though it's the same conversation, with the guy who's half a block away from me in a car, they brought in a Verizon wireless, executive to testify that if, like, let's say I text you right now, it doesn't just go from my phone to yours. It goes to a nearby antenna, which then shoots across from California to Kansas City, Missouri, to what's called a gateway hub, and then it shoots back to the same antenna and then to your phone. So that little intangible data flying through the air crossed like 4-5 state lines or whatever it was, right? And so they said that was interstate wire fraud affecting interstate commerce. I'm just like, what? So, it was just insane. So now I'm looking at 8 counts. So they asked me again, do you want to take a deal? And this time they're saying, look, plead guilty to 1 felony. We'll give you 6 months on 6 months in custody and 6 months on an ankle monitor home detention. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to admit to a felony. The other thing is they said, that if you take the deal, you have to go on the stand, raise your right hand, swear under oath that you were taking blow to set people up, and I'm like, I'm not going to say something that didn't happen just to get a deal. Right. I'm just not going to do it. It's not in me to do that. So I said, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, fine, we'll see you in trial. And the judge even said at the new arraignment, she's like, you realize you're looking at 8 very serious counts. And I said, no, I get it. And she goes, and you don't want to plead guilty and take 6 months when you're looking at all this time? And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to plead guilty to something I didn't do. They were like, we'll see you in trial. So, to dragged on. Of course, how the feds play their game where they try to drag the thing out so they bankrupt you. Because what they didn't know is that the attorney I hired, I had paid him a flat fee. He wanted to do the case. He thought it was a good high-profile case. It would give him some, some.
So he gave him some marketing.
Marketing, right. So he did it for a flat fee. But when we were attorney shopping, people wanted $250,000 for a case that big. They wanted a $250,000 retainer. I didn't have that. Basically, I lost my retirement, everything. I mean, the feds tried to seize my house, but thank God it's in a family trust, and my dad's still alive. And I'll never forget at trial, at sentencing, they were wanting to seize the house. And the judge was like, isn't his dad still alive?
Right.
And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm not going to take the man's house. What if he, and she goes, oh, but Steve's a sole beneficiary. Like I said, I have stepbrothers and stepsisters, but I'm the only biological son for my dad. So he says, he goes, yeah, what if his dad, what if they have a falling out? What if his dad decides to give it to charity? He's still alive. I'm not going to take his house, right? So it's just crazy, the stuff they did, though, when they go after you. But I mean,
Oh, they're vicious. I'm still waiting for them to somehow or another try and say we're going to indict your wife. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's always we'll indict your wife. You're like, what are you fucking talking about? I can't tell you how many times they say you plead guilty or we're going to indict your wife, and the guy's like, my wife doesn't do it. She didn't know anything. She knew what was going on. Well, knowing what's going on isn't illegal. Yeah, we well, you can prove that in court.
Right.
That's the whole thing is we'll bankrupt you.
Right.
They have such overwhelming power, and the stake, the scale is tipped in their favor so overwhelmingly that people plead guilty to crimes that they didn't commit all the time.
I heard stories like when I ended up going in, which we can get to that, but when I heard story after story that was just mind-boggling. And the thing is, when they one of the reasons they want you to take the stand and you have to say that you did it. Another reason is so that you can't ever appeal it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
of course. Well, he admitted it in court.
He said he did it. And then if you say, "Well, I just said that to get a deal," so you committed perjury. Right. There's another 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
do you know or can you remember all 8 of the things that they're trying to charge you with?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, there's
3 or 4
4
of them
different counts, right? Are there different counts?
Right. So my charges under the feds were interstate wire fraud, 3 counts, conspiracy to commit interstate wire fraud. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? But a conspiracy is 2 or more people knew it was a crime. You did it anyway, right? But I didn't even know that was a crime, like to text message somebody, right? And then what was the other one? Honest services fraud and extortion. Those are the ones I remember. Honest services fraud and extortion. And so honest services fraud is something that I think mine was a landmark case. I think the judge said it was the first time it had been used against a police officer. It was a crime that was originally designed to go after public officials and politicians. Like, let's say you're a city council member and I'm your brother, and you make sure I get the contract to redo the streets or whatever, right? And then we kick back some money or something. So anyway, but in this case, they used it to go after a police officer, which was unusual. And basically, the whole premise of that was that I at the time, this was back in 2010, I made $48 an hour as a police officer, right? So they say that for 3 hours, this is what the government claimed, that I sat outside the bar laying in wait. That was their term. I laid in wait for the guy to come out of the bar for 3 hours, basically shirking my duties as a police officer in the town. And I should have been out responding to calls, but instead I was just sitting there because, man, I wanted my bribe. That's how they make it sound, right? So they say that I sat there for 3 hours at $48 an hour, that they have to assign a dollar amount to a fraud to a case. So they're saying, like every crime, you have elements, right? And you have to assign. So they assigned, it said $144. I defrauded the citizens of Danville of $144, right?
And we're now going to spend $100,000
my
prosecuting
case, they admitted at sentencing that the government had spent over $1 million to go over in my case. And it's just like that. I always thought that should anger any taxpayer. Yeah. You spend $1 million to go after $144 crime. Like, okay. But, anyway, so that 3 hours that they claimed that I sat there, part of the thing in trial was that so I brought up the fact that, they brought up the fact, they says, in part of that discovery, they subpoenaed the dispatch records for the sheriff's department. And so during that 3 hour window where they claim, and they brought in witnesses, it said, oh yeah, his car was parked there. It didn't move for 3 hours. It sat there and he was just waiting. And it seemed really weird that he wouldn't respond to calls. He's just waiting.
Did you get calls?
No. Here's the thing. Their own discovery, which was the dispatch log, shows, and it's got GPS on the car, everything. And it says that it shows that I went to, I think it was 5 calls for service and made 3 separate traffic stops all over town in a good-sized town during that 3 hour window. So I couldn't possibly have sat there. Well, when I wanted to bring that up in court, that of course, and you know how it is with federal, in a normal court, it's like a judge is the intermediary and you have the defense and the prosecution on one side, right?
Not
in federal court, it's like the judge and the prosecutor like this, and you're out here by yourself, right? In the cold. So every single thing in a 3.5 week trial, every single objection my attorney made, overruled. Every single one the prosecutor made, sustained, right? And mine, it got to the point where my attorney was like, Your Honor, can you at least hear my objection before you rule on it? I said overruled. I mean, they're like gods in that little courtroom, right? And it was just, it was crazy. So anyway, they get this witness on the stand, and the guy's saying that I sat there for 3 hours, and he was a reserve that was riding with me the night. The guy I gave the gun to, right? So that was the whole thing of why he ratted on me, because about the gun is I'm sure they told him you can either be a co-defendant, so you were there on the traffic stop as a law enforcement, you could be a co-defendant or a witness, your choice, right? So he's like, whatever you want me to say, I'll say it.
So he's saying 3 hours, even though the logs and everything say.
He's saying 3 hours, and he's up there testifying, and I'm sitting there just, oh my God, I'm fuming, right? And visibly upset. And my attorney's like, dude, relax. He goes, I'm going to eat this guy alive. He goes, we have the dispatch log. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So he's sitting there going, oh yeah, and we sat there, and I kept asking Steve, shouldn't we be out on the road like patrolling? And he said, no, I want to get my bribe. Like, actually, like, who would say that, right? I want to get my bribe, right? So he says, and so anyway, he says that I wouldn't go anywhere. The dispatch was calling me, and I wasn't answering my radio. If that were true, every cop in the county would be looking for 2 dead officers on the side of the road somewhere, right? If you just weren't answering your radio. And so he said, oh, they were trying to reach him. We wouldn't answer. He wouldn't do anything except wait for that guy to come out of the bar. So my attorney goes to cross-reference him. And mind you, this guy's part of his whole spiel was that he had been a level 1 reserve for 19 years. So he goes, I basically can function on my own as a police officer or deputy sheriff. I can function on my own as a level 1 reserve. He can make traffic stops. He can do all these things. And he's got all this experience. He's trying to build his credibility, right? But then when we get to the point of talking about the dispatch log, all of a sudden, so my attorney says, well, let's get back to that night. You say you sat there for 3 hours. However, I have here what is called a dispatch log. Surely you know what that is. And it shows at such and such time you made an 1195, which is a traffic stop. And it was like so scripted. The guy goes, I'm just a reserve. I don't know what a dispatch log is. And he goes, well, certainly you know an 1195 is a traffic stop, right? And the prosecutor, objection. He says he doesn't know what it is. He can't possibly testify to something he doesn't know what it is. And the judge goes, I'll agree with that. If he doesn't know what it is, he doesn't know what it is. So move on. So we were never allowed to put it in front of the jury, the dispatch log that showed that I couldn't possibly have sat there for 3 hours. I mean, that was the government's whole case for the honest services fraud, was I defrauded the citizens out of 3 hours pay because I was sitting there not doing my job, when actually their own discovery shows I was. But they just blocked it. They blocked the jury from seeing it.
So how long were you actually sitting there? 20 minutes.
Oh, 20 minutes. Yeah. I got there at 9:30. I cleared my last call at like 9, I think it was like 9:15, all the other side of town. But I figured, just regular slow patrol driving, it would have taken me probably 15 minutes to get to where I was parked. So I told them from day one, I figured I probably got down there about 9:30. Traffic stop was at 9:52. Mm-hmm. So 22 minutes, but they said 3 hours, and but that's what the jury heard. The jury heard that I sat there for 3 hours, and I think they thought that was unreasonable, but that's what they heard, but it just wasn't true. And it just blew me away that a federal prosecutor, like a U.S. attorney, would knowingly put someone on the stand. She knows what he's saying is not true. Well, she knows it, and does it anyway.
He was probably told, this is how you answer it. During that conversation, listen, this may come up. If you don't know what that log is, then you can't testify to it.
Right.
And then he's
wink, nod, nod.
And then he's like,
right.
okay.
I don't know what it is. Yeah. So.
At this time, during like the court proceedings and things like that, are you thinking, I'm innocent, I'm getting off? Like, I'm still going to be able to prove my innocence.
I really did. I really thought I would. And my attorney also thought he told me from day one. He goes, I don't think they have a strong case here. And
well, if the playing field is fair, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Then they don't have a case.
Right.
But that's not how federal court works.
Yes, and that was the issue. This guy was an accomplished state trial attorney. He had just come off 2 wins where he got, in the previous year, he got 2 guys off for a homicide. That were accused of murdering, someone, and both of them were found not guilty.
And so he doesn't understand how the feds work.
He had like 50 something state trials under his belt, like serious trials. And so, but this was his first federal, and man, I think he was like over his head.
So,
because,
so every time the judge says overruled, he must have been like,
and the judge hated him, because what I liked about this guy too, he was a firecracker. Like, this guy was one of those dudes like, I don't take shit from the government and I'm going to fight them and all this, which I thought that's what I need, because they're going after me so hard, right? But the problem is you know how that works with a federal judge. That is their kingdom, that courtroom. Yeah. And if you don't follow what he wants to do, the judge hated. And my judge was Charles Breyer, the brother of Stephen Breyer, the Supreme Court Justice. Okay. Stephen Breyer. So this is his brother, Charles Breyer, who was my attorney, or my judge in my case in San Francisco. In any event, he hated my attorney. I mean, literally, you could just see it on his face. He would, when my guy would start talking, he would just like go back and like, put his hands over his face and shake his head. I mean, just, it was clearly he didn't like him, and that did not work in my favor. So anyway, I went to trial. They charged me originally with eight counts, like I said, the 8 counts, and then during trial, so here's another thing. So getting back to the blow situation, so the witness they used in that case to say I was bribed with blow, they used this woman who was a prostitute. So that dirty cop ring that the private investigator was working on, Chris Butler was with that ring of dirty cops. They were actually running a brothel, a house of prostitution, and thinking about opening a second one. And they had this girl, one of the girls, working as a madam. So I had never met her. They asked her when they went first to a federal grand jury, they asked her about me, because you get all this stuff in discovery. When she's questioned, she goes, I don't know who Steve Tanabe is. Never seen the guy. Never heard of him. Do you recognize his picture? Nope. Never. Don't have any idea who the guy is. By the time we get to trial 3 years later, it's like, yeah, that guy right there. I gave the blow, $200 for the blow, Chris Butler, to give to Steve. Right, even though I was, and then it's like, how can you even testify that? Because you gave it to another guy who he claims he gave it to me. How do you know? And I never got anything. That's the crazy part about it. But they so that's where the blow charge, the 2 of the charges came for extortion. And I learned this. Who would have thought? Extortion, you think it seems like you're trying to get somebody to do something under threat, right? Right. So the definition of extortion under federal is that you take something of value in exchange for doing some service or act, right? That came up at trial, where the judge was kind of like, so even if, say, Mr. Tanabe did take the blow from Chris Butler, if he willingly gave it to him, how did he extort it from him if Butler did actually willingly give it to him, which he didn't, but that was their claim, right? And she said no, and they went over the definition, and it said there was nothing about unwillingness to give it, like if it's just in exchange for doing a service, that's extortion. So that was a new one for me, but that's anyway, those 2 charges were dropped at trial because my attorney, he did one thing that was brilliant, is he gets her on this witness on the stand, and he says, can you tell me when you committed the felony perjury? And she's like, what are you talking about? Right. The prosecutors, of course, like, call objection. The judge, that's the one thing the judge says, no, let me hear where you're going with this. Right. And he said, well, you testified to the federal grand jury in 2010 that you didn't even know Mr. Tanabe, never seen him before in your life, didn't recognize his name. Now, as you sit here today, you're saying that you know who he is. You gave blow to Butler to give to Tanabe, right? And so one of those stories can't be true. And that was just 3 years ago, which falls within the 5-year statute of limitations for perjury, right? And she's just like, freaks out. She looks at the prosecutor. He goes, no, don't look at her. I'm asking you the question. I just want to know, which day did you commit the felony perjury? Was it today or was it 3 years ago at grand jury? And she's like, I don't know. And she starts crying and goes, that's what the FBI told me to say. Oh. So we were like, game over. Yeah. This case is over. They took a break. We went out in the hallway. My attorney's high-fiving me. He goes, this case is over, dude. He goes, we just showed the FBI's coercing witnesses. We already knew they were, because they got the reserve to, say that I was telling him things like, I want my bribe, that's why I won't leave. And we knew they were lying about stuff. So we're thinking the case is over, right? Like this is done. We just showed that they're doing all these dirty things. So what do? They come back in, they have their little powwow, and they just end up dropping the 2 blow allegations. But we still move to trial on the other 6. right? In which I was found guilty on all 6 of the other counts, even though I just think to myself, if I was on a jury and I already saw that FBI agents are doing shady things and coercing people to change their stories, I would kind of be like, I don't know, man. I don't think I could go guilty on everything else. If they're lying about these 2 things, why wouldn't they lie about the other 6, right? So I don't know. That's just me, but
yeah, I was served a jury. I got jury duty, and I called down there and told them I wanted to get served.
Yeah,
but I was thinking to myself, boy, if I was on a jury, everything the prosecution said, I would be thinking, I know what happened.
Right.
I know how this works. Like I know how you manipulate shit. And, But yeah, they said I couldn't serve. I'm probably the only person on that entire jury that wanted to get their $26 a day and sit in the jury for the next 2 weeks on a trial. Like I would have been the only one that wanted to be there. Right. But the problem is like someone like me, I know too much about how and now you know too much about how this is. Now you'd be like,
well, now we're felons. We can't even be on a jury.
Well, I know that's what I'm saying. I called down. They're like, listen, I'm more than happy to serve. I do have a felony conviction. Like, no. They said, you don't have to come. Don't come. Right. I said, no, but I want to. They said, no, you can't come. Right. It's like, oh, man.
They don't want people that know the real story.
Right. So when they got to the point where it goes to the jury, they go back in the back. Yeah. And how long were they back there thinking about it?
So this is a crazy thing too. My trial couldn't have been at a worse time because I don't know if you know the San Francisco Bay Area, but the Bay Bridge was closed. Going into San Francisco, which leads from Oakland and the East Bay into San Francisco, the bridge was under reconstruction during that time. The week of my trial, so anybody coming from the East Bay had to be diverted around to the San Mateo Bridge and come north on 101. But all the people who work in like Silicon Valley live in Silicon, like San Francisco or Santa Clara or San Jose, that work in San Francisco, they take 101. So now that instead of the traffic coming this way and this way, it goes over here, and now there's double the amount of traffic coming this way. So we had jurors coming from San Jose that were coming to San Francisco, and they were saying it was taking 3.5 hours a day to get there, and just as much, if not more, time to get home in the evening at 5 o'clock. It gets out right at 5 o'clock. So they were not happy about being there in the first place. So they first came out and said we have a hung jury, and they said I think there were like four people that were for not guilty out of the 12, and so the judge and I didn't know they could do this. I was shocked. The judge said basically, no, I don't accept that. You're going to go back into the jury deliberation room, and you're going to come out at 3 o'clock with an answer. And I was like, how can he force them to do that? Like if it's a hung jury, it's a hung jury. But anyway, I guess he can. So they go back in there, and like on clockwork, man, we're down in the cafeteria of the federal building. I'm with my family, flew in from Hawaii, and we're all downstairs. And he says, we have a decision. And so I'm like, well, I'm just having a bad feeling about this. But we go upstairs, and you can kind of tell when you look at your jury over time, you can kind of tell which ones are giving you looks like, I sympathize with you, man. Yeah. Or you see them shake their head like it's something the state did or, the government did, to shake their head like that's crazy, right? And so I knew kind of which ones of the 4 were probably the ones that were on my side. So they basically come back up, and when they led the jury in at 3 o'clock, especially this one guy who I knew was on my side, he came in, he looked up at me, and immediately looked down at the ground and just shuffled to his seat. And I thought, oh fuck, I'm cooked, right? And so they came back guilty on all counts, and it was just shocking to sit there and just say guilty, 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 guilty. And they said, we're going to bring you back for sentencing. And the prosecutor, of course, wanted to remand me into custody immediately. The judge's like, no, the guy's been out of custody for almost 3 years, and he's never ran away. He's complied with all pretrial release conditions and everything. So they let me just show back up for sentencing. So I come back, and it's like this was in August of 2013, and I come back for sentencing in January of 14.
So let me ask you, what is your wife thinking? Are you married at this time?
Oh yeah, I'm married. My wife's solid. She's so awesome. She stuck by me through the whole thing. I worry if the sentence would have been longer than what I got. You just never know. Yeah. She's just such an incredible person. I have no doubt she would have stayed with me, but it would have been really hard.
But what is she saying at this point? Like, she sat through the whole trial.
Oh yeah, we sat through the whole trial, and I'm sitting there freaking out because my attorney's telling me they're trying to give you, I can't remember, it was like 4 to 6 years or something like that, or something like that. But he kept reminding me, like, remember, you made the government take you to trial, and they usually punish you. They want their pound of flesh, right? I made them work. They offered me 2 deals. I said no. Now that I've made them go to trial, they're gonna want some revenge, basically, for making them work. So he said, the judge can give you whatever they want. They could give you 20. They probably wouldn't give you consecutive 20-year terms, right? But they could definitely run them concurrent and give you the full boat on one of them. And he could give you 20 years. And I'm like, really? I go, really? And so I was freaking out the night before, sentencing. I'm like laying in bed thinking like, oh my God, my daughter's like just about to turn 3. I might miss, I may not see her till she's, graduating college or something,
Right.
Who knows? I was freaking out. So I didn't sleep a wink that night. Anyway, go in for sentencing. The judge did let me prepare a sentencing speech, right? I wanted to say something because going back to the trial, I never took the stand in my own defense. And my attorney said, "There's no reason for you to." He goes, I don't think they proved their case. He goes, "This is a weak case. There wasn't much here other than the word of the private investigator who's now embellishing all this stuff to get time off his sentence." They bring this. He was already in custody. They bring him in from Colorado. He was at Inglewood. They bring him in from Inglewood to testify at my trial. And so
there's no reason for you to testify.
Yeah, there's no reason for me to testify. He goes, the prosecutor, I think she was Harvard or Yale law graduate, and she's just a shark, dude. And they were like, she's going to just tear you to shreds and make you look like a piece of shit, right? So there's no reason to do it. I don't think they proved their case. I don't think you need to. So again, I probably shouldn't have taken his advice, but it's your attorney, right? I've never been in a situation like this, so I said, okay, I won't do it. I won't take the stand, and I didn't. But so once I was convicted, I wanted the court to hear my side of the story.
Right.
So I prepared a 2-page thing, and I read it, and I wasn't paying attention because I was so into the reading it. But people later told me that there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. That people were by this time the jury's gone at sentencing, right? The jury's gone, and the jury box was filled with like interns and people that worked for the court who just like sitting in learning stuff or whatever, and there were a bunch of young people in the thing, and they said, dude, everybody in there was crying and stuff, and I basically said, I want you to know who I am. I said I was a young police officer. I was like one of the top recruits in my police academy. I've always had choice assignments everywhere. I was known as a go-getter. All my quarterly evals are all like above standard, everything. I've always just been a model police officer. I did all the years I was a cop, which was totaled about, I think about close to 18 years total, because I worked a couple different departments, right? I had one IA complaint in like 18 years, which is far below the national average, like way, way below. Most people get way more than that. And I had one in like all those years. And so basically, I said, my life was being a cop. This is what I was born to do. I love it. And I've lost my career. I made a bad decision. I said, I listened to this guy and I thought I wasn't doing anything wrong. But as you know, with sentencing, like if you don't take responsibility, you don't get the 2-point, right? You get the 2-point reduction in sentencing if you show remorse and basically accept responsibility. Well, still not going to accept responsibility. So for something I didn't do. So basically, because the government's claim was that I intentionally and maliciously set up these, and I basically was the architect of these schemes to set men up to deprive them of their rights so that we could all profit from this bribe money that was coming in. And it just absolutely wasn't true. My motivation for doing it was my bosses were on me to get DUIs, and here they're handed to me on a silver platter. There's a guy telling me, dude, watching this guy for hours, he's had 9 glasses of wine, he's about to drive. Why wouldn't I take a look at him, right?
Right.
So anyway, they basically, so at my sentencing, I gave the speech and I said, I'm sorry that I embarrassed the sheriff's department and I put the hardship on my family and all that, but I'm not going to say I'm sorry and I'm sorry these men went through what they went through. But that was not anything I did, maliciously or whatever. So anyway, I don't think I didn't get the 2-point reduction. He said I didn't meet the standard for being remorseful or whatever. Right. But he still, when he goes to give me the sentence, right? So I'm sitting there thinking, like, in my mind, worst case scenario, this guy's going to give me 20 years for making them take me to trial. So he says, so basically I give my speech and he says, he says, so at the end he goes, so at this time, he said basically something like, in essence, I'm in a quandary today because I have to basically sentence a police officer to prison, but for doing his job. Nobody forced these men to drink. Nobody put a gun to their head. They chose to drink and they chose to get behind the wheel. They could have called a cab. They could have called a friend, a wife, somebody to come pick them up, but instead they chose to get behind the wheel and drive, and nobody made them do that. But so they were drunk. There's no question about that. But basically, he has to, because I was found guilty of bribery. They said, and that's the other thing. So when the two blow charges were dropped, then they used a Glock handgun that I had in my safe that was registered to the PI. But all cops, we all trade guns and do stuff all the time. I had a Glock in my safe that was registered to him. So then when the blow charges were dropped, they said, oh, it was the Glock. The Glock was the bribe. So they went from cash to blow to finally a Glock. It's just like grasping at straws to make something stick, right? But the jury bought it because I had a Glock in my safe. So that one, they got me on that one for, I guess it was like accepting a bribe or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was one of the extortion charges. But so I'm thinking, right, that the night before, like, oh my God, I might not see my daughter till she's grown. Don't know what's going to happen, And so the judge basically, after he says, that he's got to send a cop to prison for doing his job, he says, so at this time I'm going to impose a sentence of 15. And I swear to God, I thought he was going to say years, and my heart just sank. And he goes, months. And I just was like, I turn around, I look back in the pews, and my mom's crying, my wife's crying, everybody's like, totally like emotional, and I'm just like, holy shit. I'm like, I thought for sure, I'm thinking I can do 15 months. It's not a big deal. But so anyway, they send me, that's another thing. So they send me to, so they let me stay out of custody, and they said the Bureau of Prisons will notify you of where you're going to be assigned.
Right.
I said, okay. And so I think that was in January, and like February, I believe it was like a month and a half later, I get a letter from the U.S. Marshal Service saying that you are to self-surrender to the ADX Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado on April 15th, 2014. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you, I still have a picture of the letter on my phone. And I go, and I was just like the pucker factor, like this is like where Ted Kaczynski and the 19th, hijacker from 9/11 is there,
right.
All these crazy people, right? And so I call my attorney, like, what the fuck? Like, I got this letter. What's going on? What's that?
There's a low security prison.
Yeah. And so they basically said, you just check in there, because that was the designated main of the four. There was the ADX Supermax, a USP, an FCI, and then the camp.
Yeah,
I'm at the camp, right?
You're going to be mowing the Unabomber's lawn,
right? No, I ended up being a cook in the kitchen.
Okay.
I was a lead cook over there. So anyway, so I get to we get that straightened out. I'm like, okay. So I self-surrender on April 14th. Or April 15th, 2014. I fly to Colorado. I get a hotel room the night before. I'll never forget, I bought myself a 6-pack of Coors Light and a can of Chew, and I sat there just like, a million things going through your mind in the hotel room, right? Looking out the window at the High Plains Desert. And this place, this motel is like a Motel 6. It was like half a mile from the prison, right? Just down the road. And I'm looking out, and there's still icicles hanging from the building in April. And I'm looking out this cold tundra, right? Like holy shit, this is going to be like my view for the next, year and a half almost. And so anyway, the next morning I take a cab over there, and the cab pulls up, and I've got my bag. Oh, and they said, the BOP website says that, we have state-of-the-art medical, and there's a new nationally a board-certified nutritionist makes all the meal prep and all this.
God,
and I'm thinking this isn't too bad, right? And they have a weight pile there, a nice one at Florence.
Do they?
Oh, unbelievable! It looks like Venice Beach. It's an outdoor weight pile with rubber mats. Unbelievable, yeah. And so the weights are old. A lot of the stuff is old.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story about that too. But anyway, so I get there, and I pull in the cab to the guard shack, and the guy says, I got a self-surrender, and the guard immediately just goes to, you get the fuck out of the car, and I'm just like, the fuck, dude? Like whatever. So I step out of the car, but I left my bag in the car that had my prescription glasses, my medication, right? I had prescription meds. They said you could bring all that, and for high triglycerides and stuff. So I have all my glasses, my medication. So I get out of the car, and he goes, "You go stand against the wall." So I go stand against this brick wall. He goes, "You keep your nose 2 inches off the wall, and you don't fucking move until I tell you." So I'm just like, whatever. So I'm standing there going, "What a dick," right? So I'm standing there, and then he tells the guy, "Okay, you can leave." So the guy starts doing a U-turn to leave, and I go, whoa, he's got my medication or my glasses, dude, stop. And the guy's just a total dick. He was going to let the guy drive off.
Right.
So he finally lets the guy get my stuff. And then I stand out there for like 45 minutes in the cold. I'm like shivering. I stand there facing the wall, waiting. And then finally a pickup truck comes driving down from the plains. And this facility's huge because there's 4 prisons spread out over a massive area. And the guy picks me up in the truck and takes me, go through the whole thing, body cavity inspection, the whole bullshit, health, medical. I'll go through all that the first day, getting my clothes. I get I go to, where you get your bedroll and your clothing, your uniform, the dark greens. Yeah. So I go in there and there's this big white boy, and I bulked up at the time. I bulked up purposely because I didn't know what to expect. Right. And so I had worked in the jail before, but I don't know what prison's like. And so I bulk up, I go in at 255. I'm like pretty yoked and I walk in at 255. And so this guy, one of the guys working in the uniform shop, is one of the white boys, right? Like the Aryan guys, right? And so he's, "Oh, hey, brother, what's up?" He's he giving me extra clothes and take this and goes, "What size shirt you want?" I'm like, "Oh, XL." And he's like, no, you're like a 4X. And I said, 4X? What are you talking about? You know how they wear the baggy clothes in prison? I never understand that. What is the purpose of that? Like they wear everything like 3 sizes too big. It's just weird. So I'm like, "No, I'm an XL." He's like, no, you got to at least do a double or triple. I'm like, whatever, dude, give me a double. So he gives me extra clothes, and that takes everything. So I go to my I get to my room and my cell, and I get set up, and I'm in a 3-man cell. When you first get there, you're in the shitty one, right? So I'm in the 3-man. They're made for like 2, right? So we're crammed in there like sardines, and I unpack, I go to lunch because by this time I had checked in the morning. By now it's almost noon. By the time I got through medical and everything, so I go up to lunch. I stand in line. I get my food. I walk around the premises. I look. I'm like, oh man, they got a nice weight pile. There's a big open area, track to walk around the track. And so I come back. Later that night, I go to dinner. I go back to dinner. And so that evening after dinner, I'm sitting on my bed. I'm sitting on my cot, right? And all of a sudden I look up at the corner of my eye and I see somebody in the doorway, and I look up and there's 3 Hispanic guys, and they're fully tatted out on the neck, teardrops on the eye. And they're like, "What the fuck, man? You're a fucking cop." And I thought, oh fuck, here we go. So I jumped up and I'm like, I'm ready to go because I'm thinking it's on, right? And they're like, and I think it surprised them. Maybe they thought they were going to intimidate me or something.
Yeah.
I jumped up ready to rock and roll. And they're like, "You're a fucking cop." And I was like, obviously I'm not a fucking cop now, or I wouldn't be sitting here. And they're like, "Well, you stay the fuck away from us, you rat fuck." I'm like, "Fuck you. I'm not here to make friends, dude." I said, "You stay away from me, I'll stay away from you." Yeah. And I thought for sure I was getting stabbed that night. I didn't sleep a wink.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above. That's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners can get 50% off site-wide for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use the code COX at checkout. Again, that's ghostbed.com/Cox with the code COX at the checkout to save a whopping 50% off site-wide.
It was like that the first.
It's the low?
At the low. No, this is a camp. This is the camp.
This is a camp?
Yeah, and then you wouldn't believe they had a riot right before I got there.
At
They
the
had
camp?
at the Florence camp. They had a riot, and right before I got there, they said that they said it was so crazy. They said if you would have been here a month or two ago, when the dorm gets locked down at night, like, because they know the guards they're lazy. They don't come back until like 4 a.m. They do their last check at like 10 o'clock, and they don't come back till 4 a.m. or something, right? So they said this place at 10 o'clock, the second the guards lock up the building and leave, they said dudes are pulling shit out of the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
There's guys walking around with cell phones, drinking bottles of Grey Goose. They set up poker tables. I'm like, what the? And so I'm seeing all this shit while I'm there. You're seeing drugs in there. You see everything. Like everybody's got a cell phone, drugs. You're thinking, how does this? The guards, like, either they're the lamest guards on earth, or I don't know, or they're in on it. I don't know, because how could you miss that, right? Anyway,
They just don't care.
Yeah, or they don't care.
It never
Apathy,
stops.
yeah.
So if they bust them, throw them in the shoe, it doesn't matter. They'll be doing it again the next night. Like it's like these guys just want their check and go home.
Right. But coming from a cop background, I'm used to following the rules, so I'm kind of like, this is just, I don't know, it's just shocking to me. But anyway. Yeah, so that happened, and then like a weekend, there's 2 stories. I'm on the second floor, so I'm leaning over the balcony looking down. But I'm always back against the wall, head on a swivel, because I don't, everybody knows I'm it's spread through wildfire. Oh, I gotta tell you this.
Of course.
The first day that I went out to the gym after lunch, the first day I checked out the gym, I'm out there checking out the weights. Right, I plopped down and I put on 225 or 315. I put on 3 plates 315, and I just start repping out 315. Like cold, and put it back. I was in pretty good shape, and people are all looking. I thought people were looking because they were like thinking like, oh, that guy is kind of strong or something. I don't know why, but everybody's looking at me funny. I come to find out later, it's because I don't have permission to use the weight pile yet. Like, you have to get permission from the guy who runs the shot caller for the weight pile. Was Hispanics at the time at the camp.
Shot caller? This is a camp.
Yeah, dude. No, you weren't. The people said, dude, you were not supposed to just go out there and start lifting weights. You have to get like permission. You have to be in a car. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, anyway, but yeah, it was crazy.
Do you understand that at Coleman Low, the low, there must have been 4 or 5 cops that were there.
Right. Well,
that are inmates.
Yeah, there were 8 of us, but nobody knew until I came out. I'm the first one who said anything. So that's just what I was getting. So I'm on the upper tier. Like a week later, I'm in, and this big dude comes up with crazy hair and a beard, right? And he comes up and leans down next to me like this, and he goes, and so we're both like this on the thing, and he goes, so you were a cop, huh? And I'm thinking, oh fuck, here we go, right? This guy's like big dude, like 6'3". I'm thinking, oh shit, here we go, it's on. And then he goes, yeah, it's cool, relax, man. He goes, so was I. And it turns out he was a cop and a sergeant at Desert Hot Springs PD. His name was Tony, and he was the one who had tasered some woman, and she claimed that he tortured her in the Sallyport when he tasered her in the Sallyport after we brought in Arrestee back, and they said that they claimed he tortured her. I mean, it's just they go after cops for the craziest shit, But so anyway, it came out the first day. I'm a cop. I'm not going to try to hide it because everybody's got cell phones. Right? They already know. That's how they knew. I found out later because I was like, how the fuck did they know? So when I worked the jail in Contra Costa, we have these things called head cards. And the deputies carry around with a rubber band like 90 cards. Mm-hmm. And it's got your picture on it. And then when they do count, they come around and they look and say, okay, Matt Cox, yeah, okay, he's good, and who's the other guy? Right, but they hold on to those head cards. In the federal, they just at the camp anyway, they just put them in a plastic sleeve that's like on the outside of the cell, right on the glued to the cement. There's a little plastic sleeve, and they put your head card with your picture and your name and everything, and so it tells what inmates are in that cell. So I wondered why, because I would see people come up the first day that I was in there. I'm sitting in my thing, and I'd see people come up and look, and then walk away, and I was thinking, man, these are some nosy motherfuckers, right? What are they doing? So what they're doing is they just go right to their cell phone, and they want to see if you're a rat or a chomo, right? So they go right to their cell phone and they Google your name.
Well, if you were a cho, you couldn't be at a camp. You know what I'm saying? So they definitely want to see if you're
like
cooperating.
Right. So anyway, I'm guessing that's how they found out, because mine was like all over the news. You Google my name, it's just like it was back then. It was like pages and pages of dirty cop this, dirty cop that. It was So anyway, that was my experience. I mean, it went pretty uneventful. I ended up not getting any fights in there. I got in close a couple of times, or in the TV room. Both times it was
it's
TV
always
room.
the TV room, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the babysitter.
Yeah.
Like if they but if they gotta have, everyone's like, well, they shouldn't even have TVs. If you don't have TVs, that place, those people would tear that place apart.
Yeah,
that TV occupies so much of the inmates' time,
right?
And they can control them that way. We're going to take away the TVs. Oh, okay, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But so how long out of 15 months? How long?
So I was in, I think, 13 months. I got 2 months off for good behavior, and then I had to do halfway house for like, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks on the way out. But the halfway house was worse than prison. I mean, just what a nasty place. The one I was at, 205 MacArthur in Oakland, like 2 people had been murdered there. 2 of the residents, like people who
are you going,
bro? They're strafed with the AK-47 on the front steps, like separate incidents. One of them, I forget how the other guy was killed, but it was funny. You'd be watching TV at night, and the black guys would get up and close the blinds, and it was because they were like, then there's like rival gang members that come in to get revenge or whatever once they're out of prison or whatever.
I mean, our halfway house here was just, everybody said that it sucked, and everybody says they do just in general, because like they're constantly counting. They make you clean all the time. Like they're on you all the time. You can't have that. You can't have this. You can't, like they're worse than being in prison in the halfway house, because you're just monitored all the time. They're on you all the time. You're like, I'd rather do my time in the fucking in prison. I was okay there. I had a routine. Nobody bothered me.
I told my wife right away I should have stayed. I should have just stayed there another couple of months.
And in a prison, well, at least federal prison, unlike state prisons, in federal prison, you really almost have no interaction with the guards. You don't have to talk to a guard except for once a year if you have team, right? Or not? They don't call it team. They call it whatever your annual meeting with the counselor or something. Like if you get 10 years, there are guys that have gone, basically they'll go like a year. They'll walk into their counselor's office when they get called in for their annual. Hey, this is your annual, blah 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 blah. Sign here. Okay, thanks, we're good, and you leave. That's it. Right. But you have to have you don't have to have barely any interaction with the police. But you go to the halfway house, fucking on you all the time, giving you shit, threatening you.
Well, what I found interesting was that, so there was a Japanese guy that was a CPA from like a neighborhood, like where I'm from, like a high-end neighborhood. They got little cool little guy, just like very unassuming, like CPA, right? And then there was an old mob guy from the East Coast, Italian dude that had been in the mob, and I guess he had done like 30 years or something. He was finally getting out. And the reason they were releasing him in California because his daughter lives out here, and so he was going to be in halfway house and then go live with his daughter, right? And the dude was old, man. He was like in his 70s, really cool old guy. But those guys don't use drugs. The little CPA guy didn't use drugs. They know I don't use drugs. The 3 of us were tested like UAs every freaking day. Like, I'm not kidding. Every single day.
Middle of the night.
Like, Tanabe, come down to the front desk. I'm like, are you fucking... And here's what's crazy. The room I was in, it's supposed to be a 2-man room for 2 people. We had 8 guys. There were 8 of us crammed in there. And I was in there with the brothers, and these guys would smoke rock all night long. And I thought, like, how are they not getting tested? Like they would literally... because my bunk was by the window, and they would sit there like literally this far from my head, like just hitting a crack pipe all night, like for hours on end. And I'm like got the pillow over my nose because I'm trying to filter, because I don't want to test positive, right? I'm trying to filter out the thing, and I can barely sleep. And I'm thinking, like, how are these guys not getting tested? I get tested like almost daily, and I quickly realized what was going on, because if you have critical thinking skills, you can figure out pretty quick what's going on. So GeoCorp was GeoCorp and CCA, the 2 big privatized prisons, right? GeoCorp had the contract for the halfway house. So they don't. So I thought about it. I thought, why would they not want to catch people? Oh, I get it, because they want to keep the contract from their competitor. And it's like, imagine if you're a company who runs a halfway house and you tell the federal government every month, oh, we had 127 dirty tests last month. They're going to be like, what kind of show you running over there? You're fired, right? So they only want to test people that won't test positive, so they can say, oh, we ran all of our tests last month and we only had 3 positive tests, right? Because you're testing, most of the people you're testing are going to be clean. That's right. But they can just put it was random. They don't have to probably write down who they tested. And so it was us every freaking day. But those guys never got tested. I thought, well, this is a scam.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you ever get tested when you were at the camp?
At the camp, no, never.
I would. It's funny. You would. I don't know if you got on a list or something. There would be times when like it was like I was tested like every 2 or 3 weeks within, 3 or 4, like literally within 6 months, I'm tested like whatever 5 times or something, let's say, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? And then you'd go 3 or 4 years without getting a test.
Right.
It was just like, and then they wake you up at like 4 a.m. and you're dead asleep, and these guards walk up, bam, 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 and you're like, fuck, and they're like, Cox, you got a UA, and you're like, fuck, and you got to jump down, you got to go.
Yeah,
it's nerve wracking.
Well, I meant to tell you that earlier when I came in on the for the medical on the first day coming in. I go to see the doctor, and this guy was a weird dude. He wore like an admiral's, like a captain, like a ship captain. He wore this white shirt that had these epaulettes on the shoulder with the stripes, and everybody thought like he's just a weird dude.
No,
he's
he's a doctor from the fucking from like the Navy or that they bring him in, right?
But they said he wasn't though. They said this guy just wore that shit because he's like a weirdo.
Crazy.
He was a really strange dude, and I'll never forget. Like we sit there and he comes in and he goes, what do you got? He's super unfriendly. And I put down my medications that I had for my high triglycerides and my prescription glasses. Like, here's my both prescriptions, one for the reading glasses, one for the, you had to get a prescription just for reading glasses. And I had to show both prescriptions. He literally takes them, just throws them all in the garbage. He goes, yeah, you can buy glasses off commissary. And then the triglyceride medication right in the garbage can. He goes, yeah, you're not getting that. And I said, no, what do you mean? That's for like, I have to have that. I had a heart stent put in years later, a few years ago, but I have high triglycerides. I was like, dude, I need that medication. He's like, yeah, you're not getting that. Just like that. You're not getting that. And I'm just like, I just thought that's so strange because the BOP website says like, state of the art medical facility with doctors on staff. The guy was never there too. It was always a nurse that was there. And if you wanted to see them, you'd have to make an appointment. Like, we had a dude that, an older guy that kept falling. And then the guy was in front of me in line in the cafeteria one day and just went face first into the cement. And the dude was in his late 60s, like cracked his face open, and we're calling like, oh, man down. And, they just kind of saunter over, like just totally couldn't care less, right? Take him back to his cell. His face is split open. Take him back to his cell. You should take him to medical, dude. No, just take him to his cell and give him some aspirin. And we're like, what? And he kept falling down. So he fell another time in the shower. It landed on his chin and bit his tongue right down the middle, split his tongue in half. And again, they did like nothing. He might have gone to the infirmary for a day or two that time, but then he was back. They did nothing for him. I found out after I was released, I found out through a friend that was still in there that guy died. And it turned out that he had a brain tumor the size of a lemon in his head. That's what was causing him to pass out. And they could care less, man. Here's some aspirin.
I know. I've seen people them not give people their inhalers, and they end up dying that night from a massive, what do you get inhalers for?
Asthma. Right?
Asthma. Yeah, they'll have a massive. They're like, no, I have extreme asthma, and you like a guy gets there and he's like, I need my asthma medication. They're like, okay, well, you have to see the doctor to get that. No, I brought it with me from the other prison. It's in my stuff. Right. I need it. I could die, and I need it now. And they're like, no, tomorrow, you get it tomorrow. Or really, what they do is they say after count. And then do you have count, right. And then you talk to that guy, and they're like, medical's closed. Right, what are you talking about? It'll be tomorrow. Yeah. They go to the lieutenant. Lieutenant's like, yeah, I'm not. Medical's closed. Nothing we do. And then the guy goes to sleep that night, has an asthma attack, dies that night, and they're like, they don't give a fuck. No, they don't give a fuck. We used to always say that the leading cause of death in Coleman, which is the low security prison I was in, the leading cause of death was medical.
The medical.
Yeah, because they had a guy one time, he went to the doctor on Thursday, said, listen, I got major heart pains. And they were like, I mean, okay, well, you have to come, you have to schedule this, schedule that. Yeah. You'll be Monday or Tuesday. And so then the next day on Friday, he went to medical and he said, listen, you don't understand. This is like, I'm having pains. I'm dizzy. I'm having pains. They're like, go back to your unit. You can see the doctor will be in on Tuesday or Monday or whatever. He was like, he's like, no, I think I need to see the doctor now. Like, I need to go to an emergency room. They're like, that's not happening. Yeah. So go back to your unit. So he goes back to the unit and he's walking, and I'm sitting there getting out my coffee. And you go to the microwaves and heat up your coffee. So I'm getting out all my stuff, and I see him walking in front of my cell, and right in front of my cell, boom,
Yeah.
hits the ground. Boom. I mean, he was a big fat guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, he slid forward and you know how he's kind of went back and forth and you could just, it's it. I knew instinctively, that's not him fainting. He's dead.
Yeah.
Like the way his body shifted.
Just like a
he could-
sack of potatoes.
right. Brah, and then slid and then went rocked. And I was like, there's no muscle control at all there. And I was like, holy shit. Like this guy just died in front of me. Then of course I stepped over and went to that fucking coffee because I knew they were going to lock us down. They called medical. Medical comes running up. They load him on the thing and on that orange, you know, whatever it is thing. And they carry him down. They're all like, hey, everybody, I've got a pulse. I got a pulse. You don't have a pulse, bro. Stop it. And then they said, yeah, he died in the ambulance. He didn't die in the ambulance, bro. They always say that because they don't want to have the guy die on the property.
Right.
And of course, everybody calls his family, and they're like, he's been to medical over and over again, complaining about this heart thing.
Yeah.
So after that, 6 months after that, they made it a rule where if you said you have a pain in your heart, they take you to the emergency room immediately. They call an ambulance and bring you out there.
What year were you in?
I got out in January of 2019.
Oh, 19. Okay.
So medical's the fucking worst. So what did you do? What did you have a job or anything?
Yeah, so I was I started as a cook at the camp,
Right.
Like just one of the regular cooks, and then an opening came available, and they said if I wanted to be the lead at the ADX at the Supermax, and I thought, well, I just want to get the hell out of the camp, like it's something to do, right?
Yeah.
And so for my 12 cents or 18 cents an hour, I can't remember what it was, but I remember my check they pay you monthly, right? And for an entire month of work, 40 hours a week, my check was $21.60 or something like that.
Yeah.
That was crazy. But anyway, yeah, they offered me the job as a lead cook over at the ADX. So they would bus us over there. We'd bus over every day, have to go through security, go through screening, wanding, metal detector, all that. And then on the way out, they do it again. And my hustle was everybody's got a hustle in there.
Yeah.
So mine was jalapenos. So I became the jalapeno guy. So it was funny because when I'd get back to the camp every day from the ADX, I'd walk in, I'd have big green jalapeno and red and green jalapeno stuffed down my socks on both sides around my ankles. And, because it doesn't go off in the metal detector, right? I'd get back to the camp and the Mexican guys would be waiting for me too. They'd be waiting up by the office. So as soon as the bus pulled in, I got out there immediately hitting me up to buy the, remember, and stamps was the currency, right? Postage stamps. Is that the same where you're at?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
stamps or mackerel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they trade stuff, or if they just wanted to buy something from you, it would be with stamps. So.
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty funny. I'd get like $3 for a big jalapeno.
Yeah,
with the stamps.
So it would be stamps or mackerel or sometimes just commissary in general. They'd give you a list. Like I'll give you the list of $20 to go get. Do they have a store guy?
Yeah. A couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I always remember that. The economy inside of prison, when I actually got to a prison and really saw how the economy worked, I was just like, this is insanity.
Yeah.
He said they don't even talk about money anymore. It's all mackerel and stamps and commissary. Like nobody even says, you owe me $15. Like, bro, you owe me, well, it's $15, but you owe me $15 in commissary, or you owe me a commissary list, or you owe me this, or I need 4 stamps for that.
I bought a pair of, what's the name of that brand of boots they give you in there? I forget the name of it.
Bob Barker?
Barker's, yeah. They're just crap. Like within a week, they stunk because it's like, it's not real leather. It doesn't breathe. It's just horrible. Wearing those 8 hours a day, they were just nasty. So I ended up buying a pair of Timberlands off somebody.
Yeah.
And they're a really nice pair of Timberland boots. And I mean, beautiful. I paid $200 for them. So, luckily I had, my wife on the outside put money on my books. I think we sent money to somebody on the guy's girlfriend on the outside, sent the 200. When she confirmed she got it, I got the boots or something, So I had these boots, and everybody would be like, "Man, those are nice boots. Where'd you get those? Where'd you get those?" They were tan, not the black Bob Barkers, right? So I had these nice tan boots, and they were good quality boots. So when I left, I'm like, fuck that. I paid $200 for these. I'm taking them with me. Dude, guys were hitting me up, getting mad. Like, no, you need to leave that here. I'm like, fuck that. I paid $200 for these. They're going with me. And they were like actually getting pissed. Like one dude wanted to fight me over, like, that's bullshit, man. We don't get good stuff in here. And now you're going to leave. You're back in the free world. You can buy whatever you want. Those boots need to stay here. I'm fuck you. I don't want to sell them.
Yeah.
I want to wear them home. I took a Greyhound bus home. I just needed to clear my head. My family was like, we'll pay for an airline flight if you want to take a flight home. And I said, no, I need to, what's the word? decompress, I guess.
Yeah.
I just needed a little time to myself to just be on the road, looking out the window, going across the country. So I rode a Greyhound back to Oakland. Yeah.
So what was ultimately like your job now? Like, what are you doing now? Like, you got out and
So
you're not a police officer.
No, never can be again.
Did you ever
sadly.
appeal or consider appealing the whole
I
decision?
filed for an appeal, but right before the time ran out to do so. So I had an appeal on file. I don't know if they ever expire or not. I just didn't do anything with it at the time. I was so fired up at the time, dude. I was so angry. I mean, I'm still angry to this day because I really think they did me wrong. It's like if I did something wrong, I'll own it up. Like the gun. Yeah, I had an AR-15 I shouldn't have had, but so did half the department had that too.
Right.
Like that wasn't the feds didn't even care about that anyway because there's no federal assault weapons ban anymore. So the feds didn't even care about the gun charge, but at the state level, they made a big deal of. I'm sorry, what was your question?
The question is, what are you doing now?
Oh, question no. So I ended up while I was right after all this stuff happened, I had I re-upped my PI license. This was going back to 2000, right after I got arrested. I was like, what am I going to do for a living, right? So I, years before, had a private investigator's license. So I re-upped the license at the time because I wasn't, now that I'm convicted, Kamala Harris, before she was vice president, when she was still state of California Attorney General, she revoked my license. Right after I got convicted, she revoked my PI license for life in California. Mm-hmm. I mean, the system does everything they can to keep you down, right?
Yeah.
And it's like my PI license had nothing to do with what I was arrested for. You don't make DUI stops as a private investigator, so why would you take that form of me making money, Anyway, so I got into, so at the time I went back to doing that for a while until I was convicted, but I also got into television and movies. I started playing a cop on TV on the Discovery Channel. There was a show called I Almost Got Away with It, and then there were a bunch of spinoffs, Wives with Knives and Campus Crimes and all these things. So I got into playing a cop on TV, and I did that for years, and then it morphed it. Now I play bad guys. Now I'm always a biker or a thug. I mean, you see the facial hair, right? But so I've got like 50 credits on IMDb now. I played a FBI agent in Matrix 4. That was cool, yeah. But I mean, I had you literally see me on the big. So up in the Bay Area is different than Hollywood. In order to get cast in big Hollywood movies, you have to live in LA because they cast it in LA. So even movies that are filmed in the Bay Area, they cast. All the main roles are cast in LA, so when they come through San Francisco, they're just looking for extras for those. So the ones I've had lead roles in were mostly B movies filmed in the Bay Area with local directors and producers and stuff like that. But I have been in some bigger big movies. I was in Jexy. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it's all background stuff.
And that's what you're doing now?
Yeah, I still do that now. So. I do that, but I also work for a company. I'm an estimator. I do for stone countertops, like for kitchen remodels and stuff like that. I'm an estimator, sales manager for a company in Concord.
What happened with the civil case?
Oh, so that's an interesting story. So when I first went through my criminal stuff, I asked them, I said, when I was in that interview I told you about with the U.S. attorneys, the FBI, I said basically to them, I said, because they were trying to insinuate, like, how do we know these guys were even drunk? Maybe you just set them up. And I said, like, look at the body cam, dude. Or body cam, the dashboard cam. I said, look at the dashboard cam. My car had a dashboard cam built in the car.
Yeah.
And they all looked at each other like, what? They didn't know anything about it. And they whispered. They came back. So later, I think they went and looked at it. And it showed these guys were the two stops. These guys were fucked up. So when I tried to use that in my trial, when then I got indicted, and we asked for the body, we want the dashboard cam,
right,
and the blood alcohol, because one guy did one of the guys, the winery guy who later was killed by the DUI crash, that guy requested a blood draw rather than he wouldn't blow in the Paz, and he didn't want to blow in the Intoxilizer 5000 at the station. Right. When he got back to the station, he demanded a blood draw. So we have to call a nurse. She comes down, she draws the blood, she seals it in an evidence, seals it with a evidence label, puts it in an evidence locker, which I don't have a key to. And I said said from day one, I said, if you don't think these guys are drunk, check the guy drew blood, check his blood BAC with the county crime lab, and look at my dashboard cam. So of course they whisper and nothing never comes up. So later when in trial, we're asking, well, I want that. I want to use that for my defense. If you're going to try to claim that these guys weren't drunk and I set them up, let's see the body cam. So this is what they tell me. Your camera in your car wasn't working that night or on those 2 stops. I'm like, wait, so what about every other stop I've made, the hundreds of traffic stops I've made, you have all those videos, but the 2 DUIs in question, both times the camera just happened to not be working that time. Oh, we're not sure what happened, but yeah, we don't have it. And I'm like, And then I said, well, what about the blood alcohol report from the county crime lab? And they said, oh, because the guys were once you got arrested, these guys were never charged. Everything was dropped, and so we purged the evidence because we didn't need it since we weren't charging them. And I never believed that. I always thought they were claiming this was like one of the biggest, not my part, but the other part, the biggest police scandals in Bay Area history. I'm like, and you're gonna think that you're going to dispose of evidence before case is adjudicated? I don't think so. So I never believed that. But basically, I couldn't use it in my defense. So now I get convicted, I go to prison, I come out of prison, and now the civil trials start, right? So now the 2 guys for the DUI are suing me and the county, like we're now co-defendants, right? Me and the county are co-defendants because I was their employee. So and they're the deep pockets, right? They're the ones.
And now they're wanting you to testify on their behalf.
No, better than that. They now that we're co-defendants, they send the guy from the lawyer from the county, and he's arguing that your Deputy Tanabe had probable cause for these stops. Like what earlier you saying I'm like this dirty cop who did all this stuff off the books. Now you're saying I have probable cause. Like the tune completely did a 180 where they're saying now that I had probable cause to make the stops. And this is the one that almost sent me off my chair. They said, and Your Honor, we have the blood alcohol reports from the county crime lab that show they were clearly drunk. And I literally almost fell out of my chair. Like, what the fuck? You said that I couldn't use that in my defense because you said it no longer existed, and now you just magically found it. Like, come on. So, it just shows they were just playing dirty all along. They had stuff so that's the kind of stuff that it really angers me. It's like, they hide exculpatory evidence. They do so many shady things, right? But, they always say that defense attorneys are slime bags. I had
the U.S. attorneys, attorneys in general are just scumbags.
Yeah, well, I had a federal.
It's a license to steal.
from the public defender's office from the federal government. The guy told me that he goes, you'll never meet a bigger scumbag than a U.S. attorney prosecutor because they are just dirty, man. The stuff they do, and it's like I believe it now. It's just
and
shocking.
They can't be. Imagine if you were allowed to lie. Yeah. Repeatedly, and you knew it will never. I can lie to a judge. Right. I can lie to the the defense. I can lie to every single person. I can lie, manipulate, do anything I want, and it will never catch up with me. I will never be charged or lose my license or lose my job as a result of it. Then how absolutely corrupt would you be?
Exactly.
They never get charged.
Yeah. Yeah, when the FBI in the interview, the FBI agent asked me with the U.S. attorney. One of the FBI agents says, "Did you?" He goes, "So the question was, I'm trying to remember exactly how it was phrased. He said, did you participate, or were you involved? So were you involved in these they dubbed it dirty DUI. That was a media term, not mine, but they always attributed it to me that I said I was doing dirty DUI. I've never even heard that term till it came out in the newspaper, but they called it the dirty DUI case, right? And there's a book written about it called The Setup by Pete Crooks, and it's actually about the whole case with the other cops doing their thing and whatever. But the FBI agent says, were you involved in these dirty DUIs to violate violate their rights under color of authority? And so my answer was this, verbatim. I said, well, yes, I was involved in the sense that I made the arrest. I'm the cop that stopped them. I go, but I knew nothing about them being set up by the private investigator or who they were or why this was all happening. I was just tipped off. I didn't know that the wives had paid the PI to do this. I just thought this was a surveillance he was doing and blah, blah, blah. And and so that was my explanation. In trial, the prosecutor puts the FBI agent on the stand and says, Agent Songsanong, have a chance to interview Mr. Tanabe prior to his indictment? And he says, yes, I did. And he said, well, what did you ask him? He says, well, I asked him if he was involved in setting men up for dirty DUIs to violate their rights under color of authority. And then she says, and how did he respond? And he just goes, he leans in the microphone. He goes, he said yes. That's it. Like, that leaves out 99% of the rest of the answer and just says the yes part where I said, yes, I was involved in the sense I made the arrest. Yeah. And I just thought, like, it's shady, man. Like, come on, bro. You got to be better than that. These guys are the ones who I used to want to be an FBI agent when I was a cop. In fact, when I was in Honolulu, they almost hired me. They flew me to San Francisco. This is back in the early 90s, and they pay a business class on United and put me up at a hotel to go for the oral boards in San Francisco for FBI, but I ultimately ended up not getting that job. But I always wanted to be a federal agent, and I looked up to them and thought, oh man, these guys are the cream of the crop. And after I saw the shit they did in my case, I just like, man, it's shady. Like they're no different than a street cop that lies about probable cause and that's the thing. I've kind of become somewhat of I'm not anti-police at all, but I'm more critical of the stuff that they do now. I was on the crypto show. I don't know if you ever heard of that. I was interviewed on the crypto show with Barry Cooper, the cop busters, Barry Cooper, and they basically wanted to know about police corruption and whatnot, and that was a pretty good show we did.
So, have you considered trying to get a pardon from Trump?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process now. The funny you asked that because I requested a pardon under a month before Trump went out of his last term. Right at the end. I didn't even think about it till the end. I thought, man, I should apply. Well, Trump's he's pro police, whatever. And so I put in for it, and of course, the wheels of the government turn slowly. So I get a letter in January after Biden was already inaugurated, saying in 2020, saying that your pardon has been accepted, but it's being looked at by the new administration, blah, blah, blah. And so, as I expected, nothing. Sat on it for 4 years. They did absolutely nothing. 4 years. This year, January 20th, the day that Trump was getting inaugurated again and Biden was on his way out, the same day that Biden gave pardons to all of his cronies and his son and everybody else, that same day I get a letter, January 20th of this year, I'm sorry, not a letter, an email from the pardon department saying President Joseph R. Biden has denied your request for pardon, and this decision is final and cannot be appealed. But you can reapply. You just can't appeal it, but you can reapply. So
your pardon went to his crackhead son.
Yeah, right. So I ended up reapplying, and I read, I forget her name now, but there was the lady who was Biden's pardon czar, and she was just fired. Trump fired her within, I think, 4 or 5 weeks of him being inaugurated. He fired her, and now he's got the other lady in there. But she was, very much like politically on the other side, not conservative but liberal. So, but they just flat out denied me. But I just thought it was funny that they waited 4 years to the last day in office, and then you just do it on the way out. Like,
well, she had to wrap her. She knew she had to wrap some stuff up, so she got her rubber stamp out and started denying.
Yeah.
What? A law enforcement officer?
Yeah.
Denied.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cutting them in.
And that was the problem in San Francisco with the jury I had too. It's like when they did voir dire for my jury, they brought in 100 people. They couldn't find 100 people that hadn't heard of the CNET case. The CNET was that ring of cops that were stealing drugs. It stood for Central Narcotics Enforcement Team or something.
Right.
CNET. But anyway, they're basically arm of the California Department of Justice Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. It's like it's like DEA at the state level, right? So anyway, this guy was a commander that was involved in that, and it got a lot of attention. My whole investigation resulted from like an offshoot of that.
Yeah.
But they knew from day one I had nothing to do with that. They never even went down that path. They knew right away. And the guy, the commander from CNET knew Norm Welsh, and he's actually a good guy. He did his time. He got 14 years, and he was released early because of COVID. He's now an ordained minister, really good guy. And he's actually, he fully admits everything he did and says it was wrong and he made a mistake, and he's owned up to his responsibility. The other guy, Butler, the private investigator, I heard he's trying to get people write a book about his life, about how we all somehow forced him to do this stuff. He was like a master manipulator. But the whole thing with DUIs is like, cops could care less about public safety. They make, in California, they have this thing called Avoid the 25. It's a big program, anti-DUI program. And the real thing, like anything, like with the privatized prisons, it's all about money, right? So the DUI stuff is it brings, I think the average, I want to say they get, for every DUI arrest a city in California gets, they get something like $2,000 from the state, and then Mothers Against Drunk Drivers gives them money, and then the feds throw money at it. So it's a huge moneymaker for the cities for DUI arrests. That's why they push them so hard. It has nothing to, they claim, like everything else, it's the guise of public safety, right? Like, oh, we want to keep the streets safe. Yeah, right. They could care less about that. They want it's a business. Yeah, it's a industry. So. And there are standard things they'll put in reports, like they'll say like they'll say stuff like anytime you read any DUI report, it'll say that the driver had red watery eyes, slurred speech, right? What is the unsteady gait?
Yeah,
right.
The definition of probable cause.
Right. They're always going to exaggerate that, and that's what I was getting with the thing about where I was talking about where I do like been on the radio crypto show and stuff. We talked about that, and people, they were all about asking me about, are cops racist and are cops corrupt? And I always say, when people ask me that, well, what's your definition of corruption? If your definition of corruption is cops are on the take robbing drug dealers and doing this and that, then that's very few, that percentage is very small. But if your definition of police corruption is a cop committing any felony or any crime or federal crime, then they're all corrupt. They do it on every single day. I mean, I worked for 3 different police agencies, and everywhere I worked for, they do the same stuff. They lie about probable cause. Like nowadays with body cameras, I think it's changed a little bit because there's a little more accountability. But before body cameras, I mean, you think if some cop stops some 3 Hispanic guys in a car at 2:00 in the morning in a seedy neighborhood and says, always the questions, the first 2 questions are, you got any guns? Got any dope in the car? Do you mind if I look? Right. Those are always the first couple questions. And if you say, yeah, we don't want you violating our 4th Amendment rights, we don't want you to search our car, you think the cops, okay, guys, we'll have a nice night. Right. It's like, get the fuck out of the car. They just tear that shit apart. They find a gun under the spare tire in the trunk. They're just going to lie. They can't say that's where they found it. So they're going to write in their report that, came up to illuminate the area around the driver for officer safety because I stopped him for speeding. And while I was talking to him, I noticed what appeared to be the butt of a handgun protruding from under the seat by his right foot. And really, it was found in the trunk. They do that with dope too all the time. Oh, it was in the center console, right? Somebody left an 8-ball of blow in the center, just sitting in the center console when you pulled them over, right? One of the hardest things for me through this whole process is the reputation standpoint. It's like, when it comes to like law enforcement or military or something, your brothers in arms that you work, it's so important that you have their respect, right? And that kind of stuff. And in this case, was really hard for me is like, a lot of guys don't know the whole story. They just know what the newspaper said, which sensationalized everything. And just, they would say stuff as if it were fact, like, oh, the dirty cop was taking blow. And it's like, that was fettered out in court to be bullshit. In fact, the crime reporter that for the San Francisco Chronicle, this guy, Justin Burton, when my attorney asked him, then, we went home that night when the woman basically admitted on the stand that, oh, the cops told her to say this. And she also admitted that the blow she actually got was for Butler because he was setting a guy up in a totally unrelated case, in a child custody case, totally unrelated to the DUIs. It was just another child custody case he was working on. That's what the blow was for. So it wasn't for me after all. So we went home that night and I thought, oh, thank God. Like, all my cop buddies thought I was taking blow or something, So thank God they're going to finally air this. We watched the evening news because every night of the trial, there was like the day's highlights, right? And the 10 o'clock news. So we get home, I'm watching nothing, crickets. And so my attorney asked him like a day or two later, he asked the reporter, like, how come you don't mention that that it turns out that they dropped the blow charges against him because the woman basically said it was for something totally different. And he goes, oh, that's not even a newsworthy story. He goes, who wants to hear about the dirty cop who wasn't taking blow? And I thought, what a shyster, man. You're not a journalist, dude. Anyway, but so the respect thing and reputation is a big thing for me. I sometimes I'll see guys that I used to work with, and it's kind of 50-50. Some guys will be, "Oh, Tanabe, what's up, bro?" and give me a hug, and other guys are just stone cold, won't even, they'll just look the other way and not acknowledge me, because those are the guys that didn't know me probably, because they did.
Well, there's this, it's funny. You only really learn that lesson once you've been arrested and charged with a crime that you didn't commit. Right. That's when you learn the lesson, and then it's too late. Yeah, and then all those other people turn on you, and now you realize, wow, I did this. I was one of those guys.
Right. And you learn who your real friends are. Of 700 plus deputies in the sheriff's department, there were like 5 that ever, kept in touch with me and wanted to see how I was doing, or after I got arrested, checked on my wife.
Right now, you've got a pardon request,
right,
in with the Trump administration, correct?
Correct. Yeah. The first one was denied by Biden, and then I reapplied under Trump. So
okay. How long ago did you apply? Is there like a time period or something for them to
No. It's actually confusing on the pardon website. It does say, on the one hand, it says that you have to wait 2 years to reapply, but then later, like 50 pages later in the thing, it says that you can apply at any time. It's really weird. So I just went ahead and reapplied. So it took a few weeks, maybe almost a month to get in the system. Once you apply, it just shows nothing. And then you just keep checking it. And then one day it says pending. So right now, as of now, it's pending.
Pending meaning, okay.
Meaning that they're going to look at it. Like I had mentioned before, last time it sat there for 4 years, and the Biden administration, they did nothing for 4 years until the day he was going out of office, and he gave immunity to his friends and family members. That same day, he denied mine on January 20th of this year. So, I know the process is slow. It's probably going to take a while. What I'm hoping to achieve through this pardon is, it just gives me some sort of redemption to my name. I realize it doesn't erase the conviction, so you still have the conviction on your record, but it does it would give me some sort of redemption, in terms of maybe even just closure for myself. Really, I don't know if anybody else would care, but I feel what the government did to me was so overboard, so unfair, that it would give me some kind of closure personally, but I also think it might allow me to get better employment. With a felony conviction, it's so hard to get a job, and this may allow me to then get a better job, provide for my family. I used to hold multiple licenses in California, real estate license. I did executive protection. So I was licensed under the Bureau of Security and Investigative Services. I did armed security and whatnot. So it might allow me to get back into those fields where I could make more money than what I'm doing now. And then, thirdly, it's, I spent almost 2 decades of my life putting away bad guys, and being a cop, you realize how fucked up the world is, right? And what a bad place it is. There's some bad people out there, and it keeps me up at night thinking that I can't even own a firearm at home to protect my family, and it would, and from what I understand, it could restore your Second Amendment rights with a pardon. Was I a perfect cop? No. But did I do any of these things that they're saying I did? Absolutely not. And it just was mind-boggling how hard they went after me. The night I was arrested at the state level initially, they charged me with possession of a controlled substance, which was steroids. They charged me with conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, possession of a firearm, possession of assault weapon, transferring an assault weapon. I mean, I had AR-15. They issued me a full auto MP5 submachine gun for when I was on the SWAT team. I carried that in my personal car all the time. On duty, I carried an AR-15 or an M4 in the car, and it's because I owned an AR-15 at home that had a magazine release button on it, which is illegal in California. They have to be a fixed magazine, and so because I had that, they basically charged me with the assault weapons charges, and the drug charges were that when they interviewed me, and like I had mentioned it before when we met, that I should have just said I want an attorney and never given them a statement, but I really didn't think I did anything wrong. So I gave them a over 2 hour statement the night I was arrested. And they asked me about Chris Butler, the PI and any steroids that he had. And I said, at some point he had showed me in his office once, he showed me a little paper bag that had a couple vials of, liquid in it that said testosterone, something on it. And he asked me if I knew what it was. And I said, I looked and I pulled one out, looked at it. I said, I don't know. It looks like it says testosterone, but it could be anything. They sell this in the back of like Maxim magazine. They sell fake stuff, that says, oh, it boosts your testosterone 600%. And it's totally fake. So I don't know if it is or not. Anyway, I should have realized what they were doing when they questioned me. They said, like, oh, and so you were holding the bag with your left hand and you reached in with your right hand? I'm like, yeah. And then you pulled it out and looked at it. And I put it back in the bag. And then what'd you do with the bag? I gave it back to him. And basically they asked me, what did he want you to do with it? And I said, he did ask me if I knew anybody that wanted to buy some. And I was like, I was a cop at the time. I'm like, dude, no, I'm a cop. I'm going to walk around my gym saying, hey, anybody want to buy this? I said, I don't want any part of that. And he says, well, what about your bodybuilder friend, Alan, who was a mutual friend? And I said, what about him? He said, ask Alan if he wants to buy some. And I said, why don't you ask him? You have his number. And he said, well, when are you going to talk to Alan again? I said, probably. He was my workout partner. I said, probably sometime tomorrow, today or late tonight or tomorrow. And he goes, well, tell Alan to call me. So I just said, yeah, whatever, man. I'll tell him to call you. So when I saw Alan, I said, yeah, call Chris. Chris wants you to call him. Didn't even say what it was about. Just Chris wants you to call him. Right. And Alan never did call Chris. But they said that right there constituted a conspiracy to distribute steroids. And they wrote in the PC, the probable cause declaration, then which holds me over and sets a bail. They put in the probable cause declaration that I admitted to be a steroid dealer because of that. Yeah. Because I said I told a guy, I said I'd tell Alan to call him, and Alan never did. But that makes me a steroid dealer. So, the state charges were all dropped, especially the gun charges too. I mean, no jury's going to convict me. They issue me a full auto MP5 and a Select Fire M4, and then they're going to try to hem me up for owning a semi-automatic only AR-15 at home just because a magazine can come out. I mean, it was crazy. So anyway, those charges were all dropped. And but they did some really shady things besides like lying in the PC deck. When they search warranted my house, I remember I had been a cop for like 18 years. I've been on 3 different SWAT teams. I had a plastic bin in my closet, literally, one of those ones that's this tall, just stuffed with SWAT gear and like badge holders, magazine pouches, holsters for various guns. I mean, I had so much equipment in one of these big plastic bins. And after they searched warranted my house, there was all kinds of stuff missing. And coincidentally, it was the holsters and magazine pouches that were missing were for 6 hours, which was the issue, a gun of the sheriff's department. So those guys, they stole stuff from my house. It was never listed in the search warrant return. The only thing on there was my Garmin GPS. That shows you how long ago this was, like 10 years ago, right? I had Garmin GPS, my cell phones, computers. They took a few guns from my house, nothing that was illegal. I don't know why they ever took them. I ended up getting those back. But those things were all listed on the search warrant return, but all the stuff they wanted to keep for themselves wasn't, like, badge holders and magazine pouches and holsters and stuff. And I just thought, that's so shady, man. They're accusing me of being a bad guy as they're stealing from my house. It's too funny. And we knew they did it because later they denied they had any of those things. And then later one of the holsters turned up in federal property, which was never listed on the search warrant return. So we knew they took a lot of things they never listed. Just, shitty stuff like when they arrested me that night, they seized all my SWAT gear. I had a big SWAT bag with all my gear in it. And on my tack vest, I had a Leatherman tool in there that was given to me by my late brother who passed away, my stepbrother, who I've known since I was 5 years old. We were really tight, and he had given me as a groomsman gift in his wedding, a Leatherman with my initials SRT on it. And so I, after they seized all my stuff back, I called the sheriff's department after I bailed out of jail and asked hey, could I get that back? It means a lot to me. And they just blew me off. Nobody ever returned my calls. I left multiple messages, and I thought it's just shitty stuff like that,
Who prepares your pardon? paperwork?
I did it myself. I did it
Okay.
myself. Yeah, it was, and it's a lengthy process. It's they said supposedly they've streamlined it because like I said, I did it the first time, it was denied, and the second time it was a little more streamlined, but it's still a lengthy document you have to put together with a lot of supporting documents they require.
What is there any place you want people to contact you, or anything you want anything you want to mention other than, I mean,
Yeah,
I know.
I'm not a big social media guy, so I don't have websites or anything to mention. I did want to tell, if people want to find out more about the case, there was this book written by Pete Crooks. He's a Diablo magazine writer who, and the most knowledgeable person by far on this case. It's called the True Story of Dirty Cops, Soccer Moms, and Reality TV. It's called The Setup by Pete Crooks, and in it, I have nothing to do with the book, by the way, other than I'm in it. A small portion of me is in it, but it really is an in-depth look at how convoluted this whole case is, and I think people can see why I was sucked in, is because there was so much peripheral stuff going on with these other guys that they just thought that I must be somehow involved in it. I must be guilty just because I know them. And I think that's really the basis for why this all happened, is wrong place, wrong time, guilt by association. I knew these guys, and they thought he's got to be working with them. And they knew right away that I had nothing to do with any of that part of it. Was never even questioned about it, other than maybe the first.
Hey, you guys, I really appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified videos just like this. Also, we're gonna leave the link that Steve was talking about in the description box. You can go in the description box, click on the link. It'll shoot you right over to Amazon so you can buy the book. Once again, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. Please share this video, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. See ya.